Hello there, my lads. Today it's going to be something slightly different. Instead of reviewing a book, I'm going to be talking to the actual author. Can you believe it, my lads? I know it's incredible, isn't it? But it's for this one here, Lovecraft's Cat and Other Tales of Weird Fiction by C.P. Webster. Chris Webster, that is, of course. Links down below if you want to purchase this book or any of his other works, and he's also got a YouTube channel himself, so do check him out if you can. So the discussion, we talk about all kinds of things. It lasts about an hour, as you can probably tell from the duration of this video. But we talk about various things, his sources of inspiration, his writing process, and various things that pertain to the stories themselves. But before we get to that, I just want to do a brief little, just tell you how much I love these stories. He's a wonderful writer, wonderful imagination. Yes, it's a mixed bag of wonderful, wonderful things. So yes, anyway, without me rambling on anymore, let's see what we got up to when we had a chat yesterday. Yes, I haven't had a shower yet. I'm still wearing the same stuff. My hair looks fucking awful. Anyway, cheerio. See you later. Anyway, right, here we are today. Hello, my loves. Today is a review of sorts, but it's more a discussion with none other than Chris Webster and his book, Lovecraft's Cat, a collection of short stories, cosmic horror, detective noir, bit of weird fiction. Is that fair to say, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it comes from my love of people like Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard particularly.
Yes, and a wonderful collection it is indeed. So
Thank you.
I'm just going to say though, off the bat, so I met you via one of the, well, you used to come in a lot through my live streams, and I saw the name. So when a name pops up a lot, I'll just look to see if they've got a channel, and lo and behold, you have a channel, Webster.
A very creaky old channel that has very little. I mean, it has lots of content on there, but I've started to do more. Um, I do these little ruminations called talking to myself when I literally am talking to myself, because I do talk to myself quite a lot. I talk to the dogs, and because I'm a smoker, I sit outside a lot. So my writing area is outside, undercover, and I'm usually encased in my dressing gown and with my laptop on my knee, that sort of thing. But I started to do it. So there's those sorts of things as well, where it's just me, usually about midnight, or when I've had a couple of beers, and I sort of think I'll record something where I'll talk about something like writing or whatever. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Wonderful. Yeah,
But
that's the best kind, I would say, doing that. I mean, that's kind of what I do. Just when you feel the impulse to do something, you just do it,
yeah,
really.
yeah. I mean, nobody watches them. I think I've had a few likes, but I thought, well, I'll just keep doing it. I've done about
Definitely.
five of them now. So, and
Okay.
then, and I will do more. I think I get very shy going on camera. This sort of freaky old Gandalf figure, but yeah.
Don't worry about it. Us wizards, we need more representation, I think, especially on YouTube. I mean, there's a growing number of us, but yeah, definitely do more. It's a great way, of course, as well to publicize your own writing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the whole thing about, especially when you're self-published or independently published, you've got to do all this kind of media stuff, which I'm terrible at. So
unfortunately, that goes with the territory, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm not keen on that. That's the reason I started the channel about 6 years ago. And I thought, right, I'll put my stuff on YouTube, and people will they'll buy the books. But of course, that didn't happen. But you've got to try, haven't you? You've got to at least try. But yeah, so anyone watching, if you want to subscribe to Chris's channel, there will be a link down below. But then the other thing I discovered was the fact that you're a writer, Chris. And so the first thing I did was I bought this book, and I started reading, and I thought, well, I review everything I read these days. So I thought, shit, and I started thinking, shit, if it's a bit crap, what do I do? But because I like to be honest, well, I'm always honest about what I review, but it's different when it's someone that's also,
Yeah,
independently published or whatever. So I didn't want to be naughty about it, but then it was wonderful. So it was no
thank you.
problem there at all.
Thank you.
Right, right. Here, bear with me 1 second. Just
I
keep.
have I've updated the cover as well. I put a new cover on it.
Ah, yes, yes.
Well, the first one was a kind of collage I did, and then I did a. I hate doing AI. As a person who was a maker for so long,
Mm.
um, but I did do a new. I don't know if you can see that.
Ah, yes, yes.
Yeah, so it's got a new cover now, but yeah, same stories.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I was going to say about that. Yes, AI doesn't do it for me, but it's still a lovely cover, and I can appreciate why people turn to AI to do their covers because the chances are that you release a book, you spend months or years working on a book and then it doesn't sell, so you're always going to be in a deficit monetarily paying an artist to do something because it will be expensive, I know.
Yeah, I mean
um
that's purely it. It's purely economic. But
yeah,
what I've decided to do from now on is I'm going to try and make my own. I'm going to do. I do a lot of collage work,
yeah.
and so I thought, well, and they're all weird and wacky. So they'll if I just make specific collages for the covers, but that's another story.
Yeah, well, yes, that would be cool. I mean, I've seen some of your collage stuff. It's really good, and I actually do really like the cover that you did yourself. But yeah, don't worry about it. It's it's just one of those things. The thing I don't like is when you get publishers, big publishers, turning
Yes,
to AI.
yeah,
There's no excuse for that. They've got money to throw at it. They
yeah.
shouldn't be using it, but there we are. Anyway, aside from that, right.
Well,
Anyway,
if
I
I
thought.
was to say if I sell lots of copies, I will be hiring an artist.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, don't worry about that at all. Right. The first thing though, I want a little bit of background about you as a person, perhaps some what you've done in the past and when you started writing, things like that.
Yeah, I grew up in England, but moved to my family. My father got a job in South Africa when I was 16. So the
Mm,
whole family, I was given the option. I could say, I'd just done my O levels, to say, stay in Britain, do your A levels, and then join us later or whatever. So I said, no, no, this is going to be an amazing adventure and all this sort of thing, very naively. But it was good for me because I was introspective, shy kind of kid, and it got me out of my shell. So
yeah.
I lived in South Africa until the 90s. I got married there. First kid was born there. I was working as a lecturer there. I got into so basically I went to art school in the 80s
Mm,
in South Africa, and it was a mad time anyway. Politics and all the kind of things that were going off. It was a kind of odd time.
mm.
But yeah, I got into art school, and then I became a photographer's assistant. Actually, I worked in Johannesburg for a while, and I got a phone call from a friend who was doing some part-time teaching, and he said he's sick of it. Um, wants to get out of it. And I said, well, I don't want to do this anymore. This being an assistant. I said, let's swap. So we
Mm.
swapped jobs effectively. We managed to wangle it that he got the job in the photographer's studio and I got the teaching job. And so I became a teacher by proxy, just by chance, really.
Wow.
And did that so we moved back to Britain to get work, and I got a job in London for a couple of years, right? Just teaching photography, and then I got a job in Wales as a lecturer in fine art at Aberystwyth University.
Wow.
So that was that career thing. In terms of writing, I started in South Africa when I was in my early 20s, and I decided that I was going to be a writer. I wrote a couple of short stories, had them published in a science fiction magazine in South
Mm.
Africa, and then career and having kids just kind of took over, and it went to the way, and I thought, right, well, I'm going to throw myself into making a career as an artist. And I did all right. I had a few exhibitions in America and Europe and group shows and solo shows, but I just didn't make any money out of it and didn't get any kind of sort of profile from it. And but it kind of went on. And the thing is, when you're working in the university sector, is that you have to do research. So my
Mhm.
research was practical in terms of exhibitions and so on. But then, well, 5 years ago, I took early retirement, and I was ill. So basically, I took early to got my pension because I was ill, and then discovered that life could be much more interesting being doing something like writing. So I had to do something creative, and there's only so much gardening you can do, I think, and decorating and so on. So I just sat down and started writing, and then I started throwing stories towards publishers, and it just kind of took off from there, really. And that was
Yeah.
how I got into the short form, really, because before I'll reach over and show you. This is what I did. This thing called, I don't know if you can see, I can't even see if it's on the screen.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
great,
okay.
it's a great big door stopper thing. And that's a sort of dystopian alternate world fantasy.
Wow.
Um, and I get a couple of quid a year for it. So, but that was the start of it. And I thought, well, I'm not a bad writer. Let's try and hone this. Let's just keep doing it. So the short form's good because it's a really disciplined form in
Mm.
terms of just whacking, well, as you know, whacking everything into 6,000 words or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's how it began. And I got a couple of stories published in what, 2022, 23, and it just took off from there, really.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, I interestingly we have similar paths in that I mean I never taught at university, but obviously I was studying fine art in a similar way in that institution. And yeah, I had dreams of becoming an artist and all of that, but it's so fucking hard
Yeah,
to you have to perform spells literally. I mean, it's
yeah,
there's a lot of luck, there's a lot of who you know and all of that. And I was quite introverted. Well, I still am really. I don't look it on here perhaps, but in those environments, I felt, especially from a working class background, I felt that I was always outside of that special circle you need to be in, no matter how good you are. I think you
yeah,
need an invitation uh,
yes.
from the devil, I suppose. So yeah,
Oh,
I then turned to writing because I thought it's the most pared back. You don't need money to do it. You don't need canvas and you don't need equipment photography because I used to do video art, things like that. You don't need any of that shit. All you need is your imagination and you need your craft,
yeah.
obviously, which I had to gain through well about 10 years of just trying, I suppose. But yeah, interesting that we have that kind of parallel, and that if you're creative in other areas, there is that is quite a natural path into writing, I think, perhaps.
I just felt I had to do something, and
Mm-hmm.
something that's creative, that's even if it's just for myself, so that
Yeah.
was really the entryway.
Yeah.
And I, in the art world, I just didn't have a gimmick, and I think that's part
Mm-hmm.
of it, unfortunately, now.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I just became completely disillusioned with the whole thing, really. And I think the other problem is once you're in that bubble, it all seems wonderful. And outside of that bubble, people don't give a shit about it, really. I
Yeah.
mean, there's interesting stuff happening, but I think it can be very pretentious kind of environment to be working in.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Yeah.
yeah, and you must know for sure. I mean, yeah, you're actually in there working. I mean, a lot of the lecturers at the place where I was at, they were all practicing artists, but that was another warning
Yes.
for me. They
Yeah.
couldn't exist as artists. They had to
Yeah.
have a paying job. And I thought, it's not going to happen for me then.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's such a strange world, the art school world. It is its own little bubble.
Hmm.
I remember once I came into the department, and our department is it well, it still is. It's a beautiful Edwardian building. It has these sweeping wooden staircases, and there was a girl rolling down the stairs. I thought she'd had an accident, so I went to help her, and she said, "Piss off! I'm doing a performance." So yeah,
Yeah.
I was out of that loop, I'm afraid.
Yeah, yeah, it makes me shudder slightly thinking about. Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I enjoyed it because it was such a welcoming, and people didn't judge each other in that environment. That's one thing.
Yeah,
Everyone is open-minded.
yeah,
And those years I spent doing it were some of the best years of my life. It's just they don't prepare you for what happens when that bubble bursts and you're out in the real world. You're completely fucked, really, unless you've got a
yeah.
lot of money behind you and you love that environment itself. I kind of just drifted away, and then I started getting, just any old job and just trying to do it on the side, really. And that's what I still do now. But like you were saying earlier, I need something creative happening in the background, else I would go completely
Yeah.
mad.
Yeah, even if it's, as I say, I mean, even doing things like when I've made these little monologues I make,
Hmm.
and then I get the screen, I get the little thumbnail and all that kind of thing, and you get this kind of feeling of, I've done something, I've
Yeah.
done something creative. I have to have that.
Mhm.
I can't just sit idle.
No, yeah, yeah, we're the same then. The only problem I have is that once I've created something, I slump until I
Yes,
start
yeah,
something else.
no, absolutely, and
Mm.
I find that every time I finish a story, I get this angst that oh, it's finished, and will I be able to think of another story? And I really believe in this idea of the muse,
Mm.
um, because when I'm writing, it's an odd thing. I don't know how it works for you. It always interests me talking to other writers because I'll get a snatch of conversation. I'll hear a dialogue or something, and I think, well, that's interesting, and sometimes it could be halfway through us what would become a story.
Mm.
So I always feel like I'm a radio set tuning in,
Mm.
and one, and I have to have. That's the other thing. I'm a pernickety writer in the sense that I need that. I think I'm probably ADHD or something like that. But I need that kind of structure of if for example, if I've got a doctor's appointment or I've got to take one of the kids to a grandchildren to town or something later, I can't write in that day. That's sort of killed it. So
Yeah.
it has to be very rigid and but that's just the way it is. But so I have to get into that zone, and then it kind of just it's like watching a movie in my head. I know that
Mm.
sounds a bit wacky, but I'll see it and think, oh yeah, that's and sometimes they don't fruit, they don't go anywhere, but
Mhm.
more often than not they do.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask you about your inspiration, how stories come to you. I think that's similar to me in that I think you have to stay very open to what's going around you. Yeah, and then something will trigger another
Yeah.
idea in your head. So yeah, I do get that kind of thing as well. But also for me as dreams, I occasionally I
Yes.
have dreams, and that informs a story.
Yeah, there's a story which hasn't appeared in any of the compilations, I suppose you call them compilations, anthologies I did.
Hmm.
But it's called The Foot of the Stair, and it has been published, or it's about to be published by a magazine called Lovecraftiana. They do,
Hmm.
I think, I can't remember which publisher they're with, but it's one of the big publishers. But so that's why it hasn't appeared. So it can't appear for a year or so.
Uh-huh.
But that story was born out of a dream, and it was a recurring dream,
Hmm.
which I had for about 6 months. And what would happen is that in the dream, is in the bizarre, surreal world that the dream is, whatever you're doing, I would always have a situation where I'd come to this tower or this building with a stairway leading down, and it would just happen again, and I'd have it 2 or 3 times a week.
Hmm.
And my son said to me, "Well, try and go down the stair in the dream, and see what happens." But I could never reach the bottom, and there was it was getting a bit creepier down there. There were dark things and things.
Hmm.
But I thought, okay, I'm going to write a story about it. And once I wrote the story, the dream stopped.
No
So
way.
yeah, it's odd, isn't it? It's just, I don't know what
Interesting.
that means.
Funnily enough, I was just reading last night, literally last night, I was reading, I've got H.R. Geiger's Necronomicon, the first one. I don't know if you can see it.
If I put my glasses on,
Oh,
but
it's
hold
one
it
of
up.
his portfolios
Yes,
from
yeah,
the
yeah,
early 90s.
yeah.
He in
Beautiful.
that he used to have lots of recurring dreams, and he said and so he would do series of paintings after these recurring dreams, all of them unpleasant by the sounds of it. A big surprise there. But after he had done the paintings, the dreams would stop. So it's like getting it out of your subconscious, perhaps, some of these things. That's
Yes.
an interest. Yeah, you're kind of self-healing in some ways, or working through something. Yeah, who knows what those things mean. But yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, lovely. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
Well, it's the like echoes a lot through the ether, I think sometimes. And I mean, I don't think that all the stories I've written, I think we 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 tell the same. Alan Garner used to say this. We tell the same stories are told again and again,
mm,
but what we give them is the flavor or the color of our time,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
of our personal take on those things.
yeah,
So I think there are great themes that we return to. But yeah, I think it's just one of those tapping into things. I, I get a bit esoteric and mystical about it, but it's almost like you're tapping into something in the ether. There's this kind of fabric, and maybe it's time. I mean, maybe going back to physics, it's this idea of the Einsteinian block universe where everything coexists and you just kind of tap into different things. I don't
yeah.
know.
I mean, who knows? I mean, yeah. I mean, do you have? I mean, a lot of your stories do deal with this, otherworldly nature of things. Do you have ideas or beliefs that run concurrent with these ideas?
Only so far as I mean, I suppose I'm a pagan,
Mm,
but I think I do really strongly believe in other worlds, other lives,
mhm,
other things. I think when I do think that there's a continuance when you die, all that
mm,
sort of thing.
mhm,
And I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, "Oh, you just got it's Pascal's wager," and that's because basically what I would do is well, what I did was said to myself, well, I can't prove or not or disprove an afterlife or another, but I'd rather it be that way.
mm.
So why wouldn't I? I'll choose the option that sounds more attractive to me.
Yeah,
But I do. I've had loads of weird experiences with supernatural things that
really.
yeah. So well, not nothing major, but I've seen things loads of times, and
Mm.
whether that's just I don't know what I was smoking at the time. I don't know what it was, but you know, it's I've seen I live next to a graveyard, so the wall at the perimeter of my garden just beyond that is a cemetery,
Wow.
and I've seen things because I as I say I sit out at night and write,
Mm.
and I've seen once I saw it was a very strange, and I wasn't alone. I had a friend. We were having a beer together, but it wasn't anything heavier than just having a bottle of beer. And we both saw it. It was just like a kind of a white, misty light that just rose up from the floor and went out. And I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know what it was. I'm not saying it was a ghost, but and you sort of there's lots of things and synchronicities and
Mm.
all those sorts of things that happen. I think was it Philip K. Dick who said about the world is a simulation.
Oh yeah,
Even
yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't.
that's gaining a lot of popularity, isn't it? That idea that it is all a simulation. There's a lot of proof for it in a way, and it's quite believable. Um, Quite an unpleasant thought as well,
Yeah,
perhaps.
we are the Sims.
Yeah. But yeah, there would potentially be an end afterwards, even within the simulation. I would have thought, but who knows? But yeah, I'm I've always been slightly more grounded in science and only believe in things if I see them. But at the same time, I've becoming increasingly open-minded as I've got older. Like the same thing you're saying about synchronicity. There's loads of examples of that throughout my life that kind of go beyond the law of averages, I would say. Some very odd things that have happened in the past. And yeah, anecdotally, I suppose as well, people that I've been around, you know, no reason to make anything up. telling me things that, you know, that are just bonkers, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely open-minded, and I think a lot of us, especially if we're working within the media, you know, science fiction and fantasy, we're very open to that idea. We kind of want it, I suppose. We want something beyond the humdrum and the normal. I mean, it's fucking pissing down with rain out there. I'd love it to be, you know, different to this, you know, what we have to suffer through quite often. Yeah. Sorry, Chris, I'm gonna have to say, this fucking thing is gonna end. It says it's gonna end soon, this meeting, so I'm gonna have to
Okay.
redo it, if you
No
will.
problem. Yeah.
Sorry. This is a, I thought because Zoom,
No, yeah.
they used to have these limits. I thought they'd stopped it, but obviously they haven't.
Yeah, don't apologize. I'm a bumbling idiot when it comes to technology. So
We're both the same then. We're the same. Sorry about that fucking
that's all right.
thing. Half an hour, that's all they give you unless you pay them, bastards. But anyway, I was going to say, I think when we were talking about your writing process and that you go outside to write, I think that was before I started recording. So perhaps you could talk a little bit about that, perhaps.
Yeah, it's most. I mean, I've got this nice off bookish office space that I've set aside in the house, so I've got this my own little place I can run to. But because I'm a smoker, which is my bad habit, I sit most of the time in the back, and there's a little covered porch at the back of the house that overlooks the graveyard, so it's a perfect place. And I sit there, come rain or shine, wrapped in my dressing gown and right out there with my laptop on my knee. So yeah, it's it. I, I think it. I mean, it's not always ideal. I'd love to have a writing hut like Roald Dahl and be able to walk down to the bottom of the garden or something and hide myself in there with a log burner stove and so on.
Yeah,
But I don't. So there's a constant stream of grandchildren and the missus coming out and so and the dogs and things, so there are interruptions, but yeah, I sit outside a lot of the time and yeah, rain or shine, really, just to it kind of works, so I'll just stick to that for the time being.
that sounds ideal. I mean, I would love that, actually. I mean, I vape, so I can do it indoors. Really, it's not a big problem. My wife vapes as well, so that's okay. But yeah, you do need your own space anyway, don't you? You need to be creative. I think you're the same in that distractions can very easily intrude on that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said earlier, it's any kind of planned event, I won't be able to write. I need that kind of structure of just being able to sit down and do it.
Yeah, we're
get
very
into that mode.
much the same. I wonder if, I mean, this, I think you said about potentially having ADHD. Do you have that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I've never been diagnosed, but my daughter, my oldest, is she is, and she says you definitely are, because it's, and I've never been hyperactive, so but maybe ADD or whatever, but I have very specific kind of functionality about how things got to be done, and I go off on these crazy tangents and so on. So
I'm definitely, I've never been diagnosed either. I think our generation, we missed that part of diagnosis, I think. But the more I know, my sister and my brother have it, and I'm damn sure I am, because I'm the same as you. If something goes slightly wrong with my routine, that's it, I'm done, and I completely lose it. Yeah, so and increasingly I realize that I use creativity, writing, whatever I do, as a way to mediate that aspect of my personality that just wants to fly the fuck out, just go crazy. So that's interesting, isn't it? And I think art schools tend to be, they were ahead of the curve in recognizing that we weren't creative people typically aren't normal, I suppose you could say, dyslexia and things like that being part of it as well. So yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it?
I know, you know, and I mad things like I will associate, you know, it's a sort of a synesthesia, I think, where I was saying this to my son the other day. I said about colors. I said, well, you know, five is definitely yellow, and he said, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, it's just the way I see everything has to have this kind of compartmentalization. It's very odd.
That's interesting. Wow. Yeah, I don't definitely don't have that, but that's really interesting. One thing I have is I think it's called echolalia. I think that's what it's called, where I pick up stuff. For example, we're rewatching all of the Osbournes because
Yeah,
of poor Ozzy passing away. And my God, I started picking up some of his mannerisms. I wasn't doing it on purpose.
yeah.
My wife was like, all right, Ozzy, what are you talking about? I was like, walking like he was. And I was even walking, like shuffling around. It was just demented. But yeah, I do pick up things, unwanted things often, like accents. And I just start talking in an Australian accent if I've watched something Australian, for example, which is quite odd.
Well, I do that, and it can be a little bit embarrassing because if I met a Scottish person, my
Mm,
accent would start to become Scottish, and I'm sure people would think that's, you know, that
yeah.
he's taking the piss or something, but it's not. It's just it's a kind
Yeah.
of a weird accommodation thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Um, when I when I uh, when I was an academic, I did a lot of my research was in Germany because I did a whole thing about German photographers in the
Mm.
30s and so on. And but I'd go to Germany and go in these archives, and I'd start speaking like this. You know,
Oh, no.
you know, you've got to kind of be conscious not to do it. You know.
Yeah, crikey, that's interesting. Yeah, wow. Yeah, so going back to I was going to say about the fact that, going to the stories specifically, there's a lot of mentions of like photographs, books, and other media that are potential carriers for, odd things. Is that something you're interested in or you've encountered perhaps?
Yeah, I think you know we're talking before about inspiration and things, how things get triggered and by certain things.
Hmm.
Um, I love old things. You know I surround my office is full of all kinds of odd objects and things. So I always think about Ray Bradbury used to do. He did a great TV show called the Ray Bradbury Theatre,
Ah.
and he used to talk about the intros on YouTube. It's really good to see. It's he talk about everything he needed was in this space, you know, whether it was a trip to Mars or you know, there were these little objects and
Hmm.
these objets trouvé, these found objects and
Hmm.
things that would be the triggers. So I am very much like that as sort of
Hmm.
books, particularly. I mean, I love books, and I'm really tempted to, you know, to be a booktuber, but I kind of think that you guys do that so well. I my knowledge is so minimal and niche. I love books. Um, I was out yesterday buying books, and uh, I think I bought about four or five different books, a couple of different things, Stephen King collection and something else. And Robert Westall, he's one of my favorite writers. He's a British. I don't know if you've heard of Robert Westall. He wrote a
No.
book called The Scarecrows
Ah.
back in the 70s. He was a big. He wrote the what did he write now? That was no, I'm mixing him up with someone else. But anyway, but you know, there's just picking up those things and having them. So yeah, a book. I mean, I think I first saw you on Ebs. I think it was with Nick and Jake and Tim.
Ah.
I think that's where I first came across you, and so I really got into the whole over the last year. I've got into the booktube thing,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the qualified to do it, but I do love it. And but I don't know if coming back to your question about the objects, yeah, those things, and I think when you're basting a story, you know, having those little touchstones, those things that's, and also things that refer to other things.
Hmm.
Um, I've used quite a lot of the mythos, the Cthulhu mythos in my
Hmm.
stories, but tangentially, sort of on the edge of things, just to kind of create that link to those things. I don't know where I'm going with this now, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
very
that
interesting.
those sorts of things. And
Yeah,
I
I like it.
love history.
Yes, well, that I can tell that, because that was another thing I was going to ask, is that every story it has the ring of authenticity about it. You obviously know your stuff, especially that period of the early 20th century. There's a lot of that in there. I mean, how much do you research for these stories, or how much do you already know? I mean, you're just feeding on what you already know.
Well, I know a fair bit, but I don't remember stuff. I'm a terrible one of those people who kind of think I have to look them up again. I don't kind of have them fixed in my mind. Um, and that is one of the great advantages of this digital era we live in, that
Mm,
at your fingertips is all this information that you can tap into. But I've also, in kind of world building sense, all all the short stories are conceived of being in the same universe,
mhm,
so that and so I put links into other stories,
mm,
which unless you knew them you wouldn't notice, but I know that they're. So I've just written one now where there's a mention to some order of monks from the Middle Ages whose job it was to go around and sort of identify dangerous sites and build churches and
mm.
contain the darkness.
No
And I've
way.
used that I've used that quite a few times in different stories.
Mm.
Yeah, so there's a lot of self referral in those things, in that kind of building the universe type thing.
I've noticed, yeah, I noticed that even within this collection, there's a number of stories that reference each other. There was
Yeah,
one character in particular that was a kind of an occultist, perhaps, and he popped up in two different stories, and might have been referred to in a third one. I can't remember now, but I loved that, those crossovers. It did feel as though there was it was, yeah, all linked in some way. It had a similar feel to it, but at the same time, I was quite impressed by the fact that it's quite disparate as well. There's lots of different, I know a lot of it's set around that time, perhaps, but lots of different places and themes going on, and each one had that ring of truth about it, as though you knew what you were doing for sure. I mean, it was very well researched and wonderfully fleshed out. Each story I inhabited, and I didn't feel, sometimes when someone's trying to write something specifically historical, there's rings of it not being quite right, but these all felt fine to me, absolutely fine.
good, thank you. Yeah, I get tempted to do these kind of great historical dumps of information, but I have to kind of weed them back, because they're often as relevant as they might be. They're
Mm,
often just too much, to the story. But yeah, I have to have that kind of little historical kind of aspect to it, just to create that sense of where you are and what's happening. Just to create that
yeah.
realism, I suppose, in something that's really unreal.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing with, it's that suspension of disbelief thing, isn't it? I think you have to have a firm grounding before you start going off into introducing monsters and the like. You have to feel bedded down in reality before you start
Yeah,
playing those tricks on people, and you do it
yeah.
really, really well. And
Thank
the
you.
the amount of world building that you're putting in there isn't, like you say, that there is the tendency to put a lot in because it's quite interesting, but you give just enough so that you know we know where we are, we know the local environment, what's going on, what's permissible in that environment, and then just take it from there. It's just just the right balance, I would say, personally. And another thing I was going to say, just moving on, one of your stories actually gave me a nightmare.
Oh, really?
It did.
Oh,
The
good, good.
yeah, you've done the right thing. So it's the weekend at Andrew, or was it
Uncle
Uncle
Andrews.
Andrew's? I
Yeah,
mean, it's quite a short story, but really, it's about what is a nephew that's bequeathed a house from his estranged uncle that he doesn't really know, and spending the night there. And yeah, that really creeped me out. I remember it kind of got my ankles up, if you will, reading it. And then that night I had a fucking nightmare about it. So there we are.
Like, yeah, hey.
Yeah, very,
But
very good.
the other thing of I sort of realized this. I did it consciously, but I realized that all the stories are sort of pre-internet,
Mm,
pre-mobile phones,
yeah.
and that, well, it allows you not to be having to, if you're stuck in a cellar and you can pull out a mobile and say, "Oh, well, I've got signal.
Mm,
I'll just call for help or whatever."
yeah.
So, and it's a nostalgia thing as well, or hauntology thing, perhaps. The
Mm,
going back to when I was young. I mean, I grew up in the 70s and then matured in the 80s.
mm,
So they tend to be either that era or earlier for that reason, really. I suppose
yeah.
it's
I mean,
it's
that's I mean, I wasn't even conscious of that, but I think it's just because I grew up obviously as well before the internet. I'm slightly younger than you, but at the same time, I remember really well, before the internet intruded on everything. And
yeah.
yeah, I just went along with your story. Didn't even think about it, but yeah, that is quite true. I think the most recent one, or the one that's set closest to us, was probably the very first story in the collection, Lovecraft's Cat,
Yeah.
going through that library and picking up that book. That was a great story to begin with, by the way, because I
Thank
was,
you.
that was the first sign. I thought, I was still a bit, I mean, I didn't know what your writing would be like. But a few pages in, I turned to my wife and go, yeah, this is good. And I was just away then. But that first story is a brilliant introduction to your writing, I would say. Very, very good indeed.
Thank you. I mean, um, and it's and not much really happens in that story. That
No,
it's quite a gentle story, I
yeah,
suppose. In terms, there's no sort of tentacle thing at the end that grabs him
no.
or anything. But I quite like the idea of. I mean, when I wrote the bits of diary that he discovers,
Mm.
um, so I went back and looked at Lovecraft's letters
Uh,
to try and get a sense of how, because it's never specifically said. I don't want to provide any spoilers, but
mm,
it's never said that he is Lovecraft, but it is Lovecraft,
mm.
and I just wanted to get that sense of this poor man at the end of his life, and then this encounter with the cat, and then how that kind of links back to the present with them.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's wonderful about it is, as you say, it's not a fucking great monster in your face. This is subtle stuff. And that kind of subtlety is quite hard to achieve. I mean, I think it showed a deft hand, if you will. I thought this
Thank
is
you.
something, you know, it's quite easy in some ways to write horror to shock, I suppose. But it's far harder to do what that first story did and be so subtle about the passage of time, someone towards the end of their life, and the surreal element of what happens again is it's quite hard in a way to describe, but you did it so well, I thought. Yeah, I was impressed.
Oh, cheers, mate. Thank you.
That's all right. The other one I loved actually is another of the shorter ones. I just wanted to mention it, but it was the duelists about
Oh
the
yes,
two
yeah.
pilots. That was so good. I'll just
That's
talk about it briefly. So two pilots, a German and an American, the dogfight over Germany, I suppose, I think it was, and a kind of a portal opens, and they both end up in a completely different place. Definitely Lovecraftian environment that's described there. But I loved that. I thought that was so good. I love portal things where you go from one
yeah.
place to another. That was really nice.
I spent ages reading about Sopwith camels and sort of just, and it doesn't really feature in it, but I just again it had to be right. But
Mm.
I suppose it's a bit Edgar Rice Burroughs. I mean, there's a mention of Edgar Rice Burroughs in that story under his pseudonym Norman Bean.
Ah.
The German chaps read the American pulps,
Mm.
and he talks about
Ah, yes.
John Carter of Mars and that sort of thing. It's a
Mm.
vague reference,
Yes, that's
a
right.
little Easter egg.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did. Yeah, I saw that. Um, and the other thing I liked was it reminded me of old British war films in a way, which I
Yeah,
loved. Used to love watching the black and white ones, and just the way the two carry themselves. The German being quite methodical and quite clipped, not really saying a great deal, and the American being slightly more, very affronted by what's going on. But just getting the sense of their two different perspectives and their the cultural whatever's behind them, I suppose.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. In fact, I would have loved to have read more in a way. But the ending was, interesting.
I
What I
was,
would say
I was,
about
I was,
that.
I was going to say, ask you because I never know what's going to happen in the end when I'm
Hmm.
writing. Do you have a, because I never plan it out. I never sketch out what's going to happen. I just
No.
write it.
Yeah, exactly the same. I just have this kind of kernel of an idea and then write it through and hope for the best, really. Yeah, sometimes, I mean, that's something that's a criticism leveled at Stephen King sometimes, isn't it? Because I think he writes that way, and sometimes he gets to the end and it ain't great. But that's the risk of writing that way. But for me, I find that it's a far more interesting um, way of writing because you're constantly being surprised as the writer. It's
Yeah.
happening, it's unfolding for you as well, and that eggs me on to write. If I was to plan the whole thing, I'd just be bored. I couldn't be bothered to
Yeah.
work that way.
I just can't work that way. I mean, like you say, you have a kernel of an idea, and I'll think, oh, well, maybe this will happen. But the other thing, which is always bizarre, is about the characters, is they develop a life of their own,
Yeah,
and they do things, and I'll often say, oh, I didn't really see that coming. Sort of,
yeah.
they just carry on, and that's why I always say about this idea of receiving stories that you're picking them up because it feels like that sometimes that you're the scribe recording what's happening rather
Exactly.
than creating it.
Yeah, I think because I look at I used to go on writers forums a lot, and people say, how do you write dialogue and all of this? But I think if you really truly inhabit those characters, um they do start talking themselves. I mean, it sounds pretentious to talk about it like that, but they do
No,
really.
it does.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's, I mean, sometimes it has happened where I'll have an ending and I'll know what the ending is, but then I have to go, I kind of reverse engineer it and think about, well, how did we get to this point? But
Yeah.
that's not very common, but it does happen sometimes. It has happened to me where I'll know the final sentence and then I kind of reverse engineer it. But more often than not, it's just I'm just bumbling along with a terrible map, not knowing where I'm going
Yeah.
and hoping all works out.
Yeah, it is a fun way to write, I think. I agree. And like you, I don't think I'd be able to do it the other way around. I
No.
think once occasionally I'll have more of an idea. I'll know kind of the beginning and the end, perhaps, but only in the loosest terms. And then by writing it inevitably it ends up changing. But I've always thought that if you're the kind of person that plans it from the get-go and you
Mm.
stick to it too rigidly, you're bound by that moment that you initially had the idea. And for me, that there's no room for growth within that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's inferior
Yeah.
way of working.
Yeah, I agree. It is. It's, you should create a prison for yourself in a sense,
Mm,
a kind of a plot prison. You
yeah.
know, and it's like when characters die. Sometimes I'm a bit gutted by it because I sort of think, oh, well, I didn't really want. Well,
Yeah.
it's just what happens in the story. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. The trouble is with me, though, I like to keep everyone alive. Usually, although the short stories, I did kill off quite a few people. But yeah, I think the longer you're with them, the less you want to. In a short story, I think everyone's disposable. But for me, if I'm writing a longer one, I want to keep everyone safe. Usually,
yeah,
uh, yeah. Um, yeah, so what I'll do in a way is kind of wind it up, I suppose. But I was going to ask what you're working on now and what you've got out that's new, I suppose, the most
I shall.
recently published thing.
Right. So let me put my specs on. Um, the so that was the horror beneath. That was the one. That was the one that was published by the American publisher, the Bizarre Archive. So that was published, and this is the one it's just recently come out.
Ah,
Weird Trails, which is again by the same publisher. This is a sort of Robert E. Howard type adventure sort of thing in the sense, but it's all kind of monsters and things. It's about a Texan who ends up having to deal with dark entities each time. I like that one. I think it is Howardian in the type of, he's a big sort of bronco busting kind of character, young guy who gets into trouble and has to extricate himself from tentacles and things.
Nice.
And then this has just come out. This is just an author's copy, but a dummy copy. But this is Other Things, which is just another collection. There's 10 stories in that one. I think that's available now as well. So what I did was, when I started writing in earnest, I tried to write a story a week. That was the plan. So I had this back catalogue of stories, and I could send them off to publish and so on. But I thought I'll just put them out as collections. So that's kind of follow up to Lovecraft's Cat, is the Other Things. At the moment, I am finishing off the chap you mentioned before, Vernon Smith, the occult investigator. There's a novella of his adventures, including the ones that have been published and new ones. That's coming out, hopefully before Christmas. I'll get that. It's ready. I've written it.
Wow.
And I'm finishing a story about my German detectives from the 1930s, and things are going a bit awry for them now because Hitler's come to power, and one of them's getting particularly antsy about it. The other one's saying, "Oh no, it'll be fine." And so that was a bizarre one, because one of the characters in that guy called von Hallerstein is the father of one of the characters in The Horror Beneath, who's also an occult investigator. And he was a kind of he was just simply a little insert into that story as a background in The Horror Beneath. And I thought, well, he's quite interesting. Let's see how did he end up? He ends up in Bolivia in 1938,
wow.
Working for the Nazis and having to go and investigate this thing. And it's not a spoiler. He dies in that story. So I'm writing his story now, and his partner, Gustav Wessels, these two investigators. And I've got to work out how he ends up getting sent. And it's a kind of it's a pre-written thing that he dies, but he has to go off and die. And I'm thinking I'll probably send the other character on the Hindenburg, but we'll see. I don't know. But that's an interesting one, because it kind of gets more and more complex for them as historical events overtake them. So they're trying to deal with that as well. Yeah.
Because
so that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, yeah, brilliant. I mean, crikey, you're really you're working hard there. You're putting a lot of stuff out. Brilliant.
Obsessive. I'm obsessive about it. I'm also writing a story with a friend of mine who's getting into writing. He's a good writer, but he's not really been published so much yet. And we're trying to write together. And that's a whole kind of different ball game, because it's quite difficult, but it's also quite rewarding. In this, there is one story we wrote together called Salt, which I really liked. It worked really well, and it was really odd, because I'd write a bit and then he'd write a bit, and we both seemed to kind of accord in terms of the characteristics of the people. But I said he's Peter Straub and I'll be Stephen King in this mix-up. So that's happening too.
I mean, I do wonder about that, because I read, what is it, Talisman, the Stephen King and Straub one, and I wondered how the hell that works, because in that particular story, I couldn't really pick up on Stephen King's voice as much. So I wondered if perhaps he was supplying ideas. I mean, you seem to be, with your friend, you're doing it collaboratively, and that you're taking turns almost. Is that the way you're doing it?
And he lives in Derbyshire, so it's he'll email me what he's done. I'm much slower than him at the moment, so I've got to kind of catch up. He's given me a section. So, well, you deal with that part. It's okay, but it is odd. And then it's backwards. We're both sort of like unsure of the process, but it seems to work. We'll see how it
sounds
goes.
fun.
Yeah, it is. It's nice. It's sort of it's a bit more pressure because
Yeah,
the other person's waiting. That's
yeah.
you know.
But
But
at the
yeah,
same
it
time, it
is.
keeps it going.
Yeah, and we've been mates since we were in primary school.
No way.
Yeah, we sort of know each other pretty well, and well, we know each other very well, and we know the
Mm.
kind of we grew up watching Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, and
Oh,
together,
yeah.
that kind of thing. So the whole Hammer horror world was our backdrop.
Mm.
So we're in accord, I think. So we'll see how it
Yeah.
works out.
Ah, exciting stuff. Yeah, lovely. Well, it's been lovely talking to you, Chris. I'm glad we've met virtually, I suppose, but met at last. And yeah, thoroughly
Thank you.
enjoyed this. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to promote my work. It's always
No problem.
appreciated.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very welcome. Anyway, yeah. Cheerio.
Cheers, John. Thank you.
I'll leave it on, but I'll cut that off. Yeah, do you think that was all right? Did that go all right?
Yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
I can't see myself on the camera, so I'm going to cringe when I see it.
Oh, it's
So
fine. And I should have said, I was going to say, and then we moved on, but I think you would be perfect doing your own booktube if you did fancy it. I know you want to get around this idea of not liking yourself being on the camera, but you're perfectly natural doing this. I know you can't see yourself, but that's what I do. So while we were talking, I cover myself up because I don't want to see it. It's harder when you're editing it, obviously,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I was thinking about is audiobooks because
Mm.
yours was great, by the way. That
Mm.
the person you got to do, the lady to do that was so good. And I was really invested in listen. I mean, I enjoyed the story originally when I'd read it, but listening to the audiobook, it was great. It
Oh,
was really
cheers.
professional. Yeah.
She's a writer as well, although she writes non-fiction. I think she's writing a book on the history of a part of India. It's quite niche, but she's a very intelligent young woman, um, but a wonderful voice. As soon as first met, I've known her for years now, but as soon as I heard her, I thought, my God, she would be great at narrating
Yeah.
books. And apparently she's been approached before, but normally for smut, and she won't do anything. As you can imagine, there's some filthy people out there, but yeah, she's very good. And so we're going to be meeting up at some point because I'm going to kind of show her how to edit herself, so then she's the full package.
Yeah.
So if anyone approaches her again, she can do the whole thing. But
Yeah, she's good.
yeah, I agree. I
I
thought she was good.
I did the duelists, the story mentioned before. I did an audio version of that. It's on my web on my YouTube channel.
Hmm.
But I don't really like. I've got to be more natural in the way I speak, and what I do is I try and turn myself into Christopher Lee. So I'm going, oh, and you say it, and I've got to stop
That's a good
myself from
idea.
doing that.
Yeah, I agree in that the way I kind of express myself on here isn't the way I would in real life. I suppose you have to take on, you're performing really, aren't you,
Yeah.
to a certain extent, but at the same time it's me, but it's not me. So it's kind of like a
Yes. Yeah.
filter, I suppose. I get more like this when I'm drunk.
Yeah.
If you
You
will.
know, I was listening to an interview of Ozzy Osbourne again the other day,
Ah,
actually, where he was talking about that. He said, there's John Osborne and there's Ozzy. And he said, I can't stop Ozzy coming out when the fans, because that's what they expect. So I have to
yeah.
become Ozzy,
Hmm.
this kind of character.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think that distancing yourself from who you are in real life allows you to do things like this, or to
Yeah.
do your own channel that you wouldn't otherwise do. And I think for some people it might be confusing. So people that know me in real life, they're like, crikey, you're not normally like this, but I am amongst my closest people. I'm like that. So
Yeah.
I'm then forcing that out, if you will. So it's a weird thing. Yeah, it's a strange dichotomy, a split personality almost.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a fine line to tread, especially when you, like me and you, we take on accents and shit. You've got to be careful.
And I'm terrible. I'm terrible at accents as well, but they sound great to me.
Yeah.
I've got a cousin who grew up in Australia, and I do my Australian accent to her, and she hates it. She really hates it. So I do it more. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, good day, mate. You know, how's it going? And she's like, oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, I don't. It's a weird thing, isn't it? But I like you. I do enjoy it. I've finally got out the last mannerisms I had of Ozzy, but I just loved. I fucking loved that series, the original Osbournes. But I mean, he does. I don't know. I don't think it's scripted for sure, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff that he did. That bit where he's trying to get his itinerary from Sharon. She won't give it to him, and he storms off, sits in a chair, and falls back. I mean, that you can't script that. It's just him.
Yeah,
It's just.
yeah,
But he seemed such a nice chap. I obviously didn't know him when he was off his tits all the time. Probably wasn't nice to live with then, but he just seemed like a, for all the fact that he seems befuddled all the time, he seems to
yeah,
know what's right and wrong, if you know what I mean. He seems to have
yeah.
he had a
Yeah,
good
you know,
head on his shoulders.
I don't think he ever. I mean, like you, I'm from a working class background. My dad was a factory worker, or you know, he'd been in the Merchant Navy when he was young, and then when I was born, he gave up the sea, and then he started working in factories. And he never complained about it; he just did it.
Mhm.
But there's something about Ozzy Osbourne's got the same kind of very strong working class background, and
Yeah.
there's a groundedness there which
Yeah.
comes across. I think, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely picked that up. I think that's what attracts me to him, really. I suppose. Um, yeah, it's strange in a way. The way I talk is almost, it sounds kind of posh, I suppose. But at the same, and when I was at school, people used to think I was like a posho or something, but I was like, we were a poor working class family. We didn't have anything. And the thing I used to dread was going to school on a non-school uniform day, because it was like third, fourth hand stuff, and I knew I was going to get the piss taken out. But I don't know why that is. I don't know. Yeah, it's a strange
Yeah,
thing.
I took my daughter, my youngest, she's 14. Took her to. She was the late. I was 45 when she was born. I
Mm.
took her to buy a new pair of shoes for school, and told her a story. I said when I was starting high school, my dad brought me a pair of shoes. Now he used to get them issued. He used to work at ICI and he used to get these shoes issued, leather shoes. He said, "These will do for you, lad. They are." And they were safety shoes, and they had, like, you know, steel toe caps and everything. But not wanting to offend him or upset him, I said, "Yeah, you know, great, I'll wear them." Well, all my mates at school took the piss out of me. They said,
Mm.
"Look like Frankenstein's monster," and you know the
No.
rest of it. You know, so yeah, I get it.
School is a hellish place. Let's
Yeah,
just. I mean, it's probably it's going to be worse now,
yeah,
but I
absolutely.
didn't
Yeah,
like it.
I can't imagine being a. I mean, you know, I did teaching for all those years, but imagine doing it at school. It must be an absolute nightmare.
I
You
almost
know.
went down that path. I mean, that's one place that art graduates end up being art teachers. But I would
Yeah,
have been eaten alive. Yeah. Oh, there you
yeah,
go. Yeah.
yeah,
But university I would probably enjoy that, or even college level, but secondary
yeah.
school, no.
No. You know, well, if you're teaching people who don't really want to be there,
Hmm,
half of them, you know,
that's right.
that's hard work. That's
And
too
and
much
with
hard
all the
work.
phones and that now, I mean, Christ,
Yeah, yeah,
imagine what they're going through, all the social media crap. It must be fucking awful.
yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine. But yeah, so Chris, it's said that the meeting's going to end in 10 minutes. That was about 20 minutes ago, so I don't know what the hell's going on. Well, yeah, it's leave it, I guess. But yeah, yeah, yeah. I bloody loved this chat, Chris. You're
Oh,
a good
good. It was
chap.
nice.
Good chap.
It was nice to speak to you too. It
Mm,
really
oh, thanks
was.
very much.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do recommend you trying it. Perhaps do some book stuff, because I think people would really. It's like, for me, I don't know very much at all. I just like it. I enjoy it, and I think if you have that passion for what you enjoy, other people,
yeah,
pull them in a way. There are
yeah,
channels where they know, like Chris, Liminal Spaces, that chap. very, very knowledgeable fellow. There's people like him. He kind of bridges the gap between the two. I find him very entertaining as well. There's others that are far more dry, and for me, bore my tits off. But they do know their stuff, and
Yeah.
there is an attraction to that, isn't there? People that know what they're talking about, there is an attraction there. But I think you would fit in very nicely. I personally think.
Well, yeah, I'm not so worried about sitting in front of the camera, but I suppose I'm worried about just making an idiot of myself, which is I'm very good at doing. So yeah,
You'd
I
be
don't know.
You'd be all right. I mean, my first ones were fucking awful. The first couple of years, the first few videos, it's like someone's behind me with a gun to my head. It's that kind of thing. You just
Yeah.
need to get past that phase, and then
Yes.
it just works. I think it's
I
worth
think
a
I
try, though. I mean, definitely. You talk
yeah.
really fluently, and
Well, I mean, my accent is I've got I think I've got an accent, sort of there's an accent there, but it's been kind of ironed out of me a little bit. So I don't know. It depends if
well,
I
you
when I go.